Across the world, from bustling metropolises to small villages, the written word has long been subject to scrutiny, suspicion, and suppression. According to global tracking organizations, tens of thousands of books, perhaps as many as 60,000 worldwide in the past century, have faced outright bans, removals, restrictions, or campaigns for their elimination. In the United States alone, over 11,000 distinct titles were challenged or removed in just the past 3 years, but the phenomenon is far broader, with countries on every continent engaging with censorship as a means of shaping public consciousness and reinforcing dominant ideologies. Book burnings, public denouncements, clandestine underground reading circles, these are not just relics of the distant past, but recurring motifs that play out under authoritarian regimes and liberal democracies alike. The politics of book banning uncovers not just who wields power, but what that power fears most. Whether orchestrated by governments, religious authorities, or local social actors, censorship reveals societies at their most anxious, haunted by the spectre of ideas that cannot easily be confined. Attempts to silence stories so often end up amplifying them, transforming forbidden titles into emblems of resistance, curiosity, and change. From manifestos that sparked revolutions to novels that dared to tell uncomfortable truths, the books targeted for suppression often become some of the most influential in history. Yet the societal effects of book banning are anything but romantic. Such acts constrict not only what is read, but what is imagined, debated, or even considered possible. They limit opportunities for empathy, intellectual growth, and critical citizenship across generations. Still, as we'll see, censorship is always paradoxical, sometimes driving underground intellectual flourishing, sometimes shaping entire systems of dissent. In this video, we'll follow the winding global journey of book banning, mapping its historical roots, detailing modern controversies across continents, and examining research on its psychological, educational, and cultural impacts. We'll surface stories from Asia, Africa, Europe, the Americas, and Oceania to show how the appetite for censorship reflects and distorts the values of every society it touches. If literature is, as the Czech writer Milan Kundera once said, the memory of humanity, then the politics of banning books is the battleground for what and who we are allowed to remember. At its heart, the banning of books is political, an exercise in societal control, wielded by those wary of losing their grip over meaning and memory. Far more than simply protecting vulnerable readers, book bans are almost always about policing the boundaries of acceptable thought. This story stretches back millennia. The Emperor Qin Shi Huang ordered the burning of Confucian texts across China, seeking to erase critical traditions and solidify legalist doctrine, a campaign that historians note actually laid the groundwork for future intellectual resistance. In Roman times, the poet Ovid's works were banished as threats to moral order, while in Islamic history, certain philosophical texts navigated a precarious dance between forbidden and required reading, depending on dynastic whim. As George Bernard Shaw once declared, all censorships exist to prevent anyone from challenging current conceptions and existing institutions. All progress is initiated by challenging current conceptions and executed by supplanting existing institutions. Consequently, the first condition of progress is the removal of censorship. In the 17th century, Europe saw both church and state coordinate bans. Galileo's dialogue concerning the two chief world systems was censored for contradicting Catholic cosmology, and in England, books that expressed liberating ideas about governance or religion risked public burning and the author's imprisonment. The 20th century intensified these struggles on new scales. The infamous Nazi book burnings in 1933 were mirrored by Stalin's Soviet Union, where both foreign and domestic works were purged for ideological consistency. Yet archival research shows that from the Weimar Republic through the Iron Curtain and Cold War, underground reading circles, Lesekreise in Germany, Samizdat in the USSR, contraband literature in Francoist Spain, secretly preserved censored ideas, highlighting how suppression often breeds new forms of literary community and activism. In apartheid-era South Africa, the Publications Control Board classified literature for undesirable content, leading to the suppression of anti-apartheid novels by Nadine Gordimer, Athol Fugard, and Miriam Tlali. Research by the University of Cape Town revealed that these restrictions not only tried to silence dissent, but also produced shadow canons of underground African literature, now studied in post-apartheid curricula for their historical significance. Meanwhile, the Catholic Church's Index Librorum Prohibitorum catalogued thousands of forbidden titles over 4 centuries. Its effects lingered across France, Spain, and Latin America until the index's abolition in 1966. In Southeast Asia, Indonesia's successive regimes have restricted books on communism, West Papuan identity, and religious pluralism. Studies from Jakarta's University of Paramadina tracked a post-ban surge in underground translations and digital archives, often facilitated by student networks. Harper Lee once observed, "Censorship is the tool of those who have the need to hide actualities from themselves and from others. Their fear is only their inability to face what is real." Book banning, then, is as much about reinforcing norms as it is about responding to deep-rooted fears of social upheaval, moral decadence, or even the uncertainty of the future. Modern Europe, and especially the UK, prides itself on liberal traditions, yet formal and informal book censorship is on the rise. A 2024 British Library report noted a growing phenomenon of quiet omission, whereby controversial books are kept out of recommended lists, author visits, or curricula, not officially outlawed, but functionally invisible to young readers. In 2023, the National Literacy Trust found that 1 in 5 UK schools had removed or restricted books featuring LGBTQ+ characters, Black British experiences, or graphic depictions of historical traumas, often at the request of parent groups or local officials. Ireland's Censorship of Publications Board, while less active today, restricted over 1,500 titles in the 20th century, with many bans remaining in force until the 1990s. A 2017 Trinity College Dublin study tracked the reintroduction of previously censored works, finding marked increases in both sales and mainstream adoption when bans were lifted. In continental Europe, the legacy of communist and fascist-era censorship lingers. Poland's 2022 restrictions on gender ideology in educational materials have led to the quiet shelving of books by Nobel laureate Olga Tokarczuk and other LGBTQ+ authors. PEN International documented that Hungary's 2021 child protection law has resulted in dozens of books being forcibly shrink-wrapped, excluded from schools, or sold only with warning labels, fueling protests from both teachers and students. Germany, in a turn towards content transparency, briefly required municipalities to label certain library titles as potentially harmful to democratic values. A federal court invalidated these measures in 2024 after activist and academic pushback, citing German and European Union studies showing that exposure to diverse texts actually strengthens rather than undermines democratic engagement. Sweden and Norway, usually seen as bastions of liberalism, faced public debate in 2022 to 2024 when progressive children's books discussing refugee experiences or racial inequality were challenged in several school districts. A European Commission review confirmed that while formal bans remain rare, subtler pressures, soft censorship, are very much alive across the continent. Ursula K. Le Guin warned, "A dangerous book will always be in danger from those it threatens with the demand that they question their assumptions. They'd rather hang on to the assumptions and ban the book." Book banning is emphatically not just a Western preoccupation. In numerous African nations, colonial-era censorship frameworks persisted long after independence, sometimes retooled to suppress opposition or control historical memory. Kenya's 1998 ban on 30 books as seditious and immoral drew international criticism, yet studies from the University of Nairobi show that such bans, paradoxically, nurtured a thriving market of underground presses and literary gatherings in urban centres. In Nigeria, literature by Chinua Achebe and Wole Soyinka was targeted during the Biafran conflict and military rule, contributing to their global reputations as voices against oppression. In India, the battle over books is ideological and religious. Works like Salman Rushdie's The Satanic Verses and Perumal Murugan's rural novels have faced bans for offending religious communities, with Supreme Court challenges and mass protests complicating the landscape. According to the Indian Journal of Literary Studies, these controversies create waves of demand for banned works, fueling underground reading circles, not just in English, but in translation across dozens of regional languages. China's government continues its centuries-long tradition, now digitally, banning both works critical of Communist Party rule and accounts of events like Tiananmen Square, as documented in recent Amnesty International and PEN International annual reports. The Hong Kong National Security Law of 2020 dramatically widened the scope for removing dangerous books. Yet tech-savvy students and activists have routinely outmaneuvered these efforts, creating encrypted e-libraries and offshore book clubs. Australia, historically known for its relatively strict censorship, notoriously banning Lady Chatterley's Lover and Lolita into the 1960s, has in recent years grappled with attempts to restrict Indigenous memoirs and children's books addressing the stolen generations. A 2023 University of Sydney study identified a marked bounce in legal sales and social media mentions for books facing attempted bans. In Latin America, both right-wing and left-wing regimes have restricted works challenging the prevailing political order. Argentina's military junta banned literature associated with subversion, while in Venezuela, current restrictions target texts perceived as undermining national unity or sympathizing with opposition leaders. Early modern era: science, religion, and state. The censorship of Galileo's dialogue marked the eternal struggle between scientific inquiry and dogma. Successive studies of church archives by the Vatican reveal thousands of banned texts, including treatises on astronomy, anatomy, and philosophy, sometimes smuggled into universities under false covers. 19th to 20th century: literature, empire, and fight for freedom. In the American South, Uncle Tom's Cabin was vilified and destroyed out of fear it would incite abolitionist fervor. Research from Harvard's Schlesinger Library demonstrates how this backlash paradoxically fueled broader literacy campaigns and anti-ban book clubs among black communities. Similarly, Darwin's Origin of Species was suppressed in conservative religious schools across Kentucky, Tennessee, and Bavaria, delaying science education for decades. Authoritarianism and Cold War. Nazi Germany's burnings and Stalin's Doctor's Plot purges decimated entire generations of writers. Post-war archives document how samizdat literature in the USSR, Sam Hisby in Iran, and later digital dissidents in Belarus kept banned ideas alive. British and Irish bans of controversial books, from Lolita to Ulysses, were often justified as upholding public morality, yet subsequent studies, such as one found that restricted titles outsold their unbanned counterparts within 5 years of official release. Contemporary era, the battle continues. As censorship shifts from state-led to decentralized, the range of targets only grows. Over 40 countries reported increased book bans or attempted restrictions in 2023 to 2024, according to UNESCO. Modern case studies confirm that newly banned books experience surges in global sales, translation requests, and digital downloads, what PEN America and European literary researchers call the paradox of suppression. Book bans ripple outward, altering everything from individual mindsets to the collective trajectory of culture. Educational researchers in the UK's Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sport, DCMS, found in their 2023 report that students who attended schools with active book banning campaigns reported lower engagement with literature, weaker critical reading skills, and diminished empathy. In the US, a 2024 University of Pennsylvania survey of school districts with high levels of censorship found 17% decline in student-reported love for reading, 13% lower standardized reading scores in affected districts over 3 years, doubling of student-organized underground book exchanges. Banned books occupy an outsized place in the collective imagination. Social media now amplifies the forbidden fruit effect. Banned authors and titles trend, are translated, circulate through encrypted drives, and become must-read status symbols. In 2024, #BannedBooks trended across Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok during Banned Books Week, amassing millions of reads and sparking spontaneous community libraries worldwide. Censorship has other ironies. In India, bans on Dalit literature or feminist critique have driven such works to the top of bestseller lists, with literary festivals embracing their controversy as proof of relevance. In Turkey, government crackdowns on Kurdish, Armenian, and LGBTQ+ literature have been met with street libraries and festival readings in public parks. In the UK, every attempt to restrict a classic, To Kill a Mockingbird, Animal Farm, or Lolita, provokes critical examinations in mainstream media and a renewed interest in why these books were written in the first place. Defending banned books is defending the right to think, question, and evolve. Reading these works is not just about challenging power, but about preserving the fullness of the human experience. Voices otherwise silenced, stories that refuse to disappear, and histories that shape collective identity. Recent UK parliamentary reports stress that access to controversial literature remains integral for education in pluralistic societies, citing research that engagement with challenging books fosters resilience, media literacy, and democratic stability. UNESCO's Freedom to Read initiative has documented that societies with fewer restrictions on books are more innovative, peaceful, and adaptable. The act of reading, sharing, and defending banned books is a declaration of faith in dialogue, compassion, and the timeless power of stories to disrupt, heal, and connect across time and culture. As the world continues to grapple with censorship, the future of literature is marked by both challenges and remarkable resilience. Digital technology, often a double-edged sword, has become a vital tool for activists, readers, and publishers determined to preserve access to banned books. Encrypted e-libraries, decentralized archives, and virtual reading circles circumvent traditional gatekeepers, creating new pathways for ideas to circulate despite attempts at suppression. Youth-led movements on social media platforms amplify marginalized voices and reshape the cultural conversation. Hashtags like #bannedbooks and viral read-alongs connect young readers globally, transforming acts of censorship into sparks of solidarity and curiosity. This generation's engagement with banned literature signals a growing appetite for critical thought, diversity, and inclusion. Legally, momentum is building in many countries toward protections for intellectual freedom. Debates around the balance between community standards and free speech continue to evolve, highlighting the importance of public literacy and critical media education in democratic societies. Institutions such as UNESCO, PEN International, and grassroots coalitions play crucial roles in advocating for the right to read and fostering global dialogue. Yet, caution remains necessary. Emerging challenges such as algorithmic content filtering, AI moderation biases, and the rise of soft censorship require vigilance and adaptive strategies. The battle over narratives is increasingly complex, demanding creativity, cooperation, and persistence. New generations armed with digital tools and a fierce commitment to freedom ensure that banned books do not disappear, but instead find fresh life, continuing to challenge, inspire, and connect across borders and time. In conclusion, book banning is a mirror, reflecting a society's greatest insecurities and highest aspirations. Across continents, centuries, and ideologies, the conflicts over who may read what and why shape the arc of history. From China to Brazil, from Lagos to London, every attempted erasure is countered by networks of preservation, protest, and reinvention. Books that are feared often become the books most needed. The promise of literature survives every trial. New generations find new ways to read. Let us remember, to defend banned books is to defend not just freedom of speech, but the very possibility of freedom itself. Because, in the end, a society that fears books is a society that fears free thought. So as you close this video, remember, every story defended is a victory against silence. Pick up a banned book, pass it on, start a conversation, online, in real life, wherever ideas matter. Let your curiosity be louder than fear, and your empathy sharper than censorship. As the world increasingly becomes a place where the right to read and imagine cannot be taken for granted, your voice and your choice matter. The future of freedom is written every time you turn a page, and it depends on each of us. Read bravely, the world may just follow.